Modal verbs. So here they are. Here are all of the modal verbs in the English language. Can, could, may, might, must, shall, should, will, would. Now, modal verbs can be seen as helping verbs because they help the main verb in a sentence. They can never be the only verb in a sentence. They always have to come alongside a main verb. Now, there are lots of different reasons why we use modal verbs, including when something is possible, impossible, or certain. For example, what's this a picture of? Well, it might be an animal. It can't be a frog. It must be a giraffe. And in fact it is. It's a giraffe walking past a window, obviously. We also use modal verbs when we want to talk about ability, obligation, ask permission, or make requests or offers. For example, I can't talk to animals. You must stop here. May I ask a question? Could I have a cup of tea, please? Would you like some help? Rules. So there are a couple of rules that modal verbs abide by. And the first one is that modal verbs don't change. Now, it might be easier to understand this rule if we look at a main verb first. For example, walk. I walk to school. So walk can change. You can add s, ed or ing to the end of it. It can become walks, walked or walking. For example, if you change the subject I to he, the sentence would be he walks to school and walk changes to walks. But if you add a modal verb in the sentence, I may walk to school, may never changes. You can't add s, ed or ing or anything else to may. It's always going to be may. For example, if you change the subject I to he may walk to school, may is still the same. The second rule is that there's always a verb after a modal verb, and if you look at the sentence above, I may walk to school, the main verb walk comes after the modal verb may. Now, there's only one exception, and that's when there's a question which involves a modal verb. For example, may I walk to school? So walk still comes after the modal verb may, but it doesn't come directly after it. A note about semi-modal verbs. So these are the words that sometimes behave like modal verbs and sometimes they behave like main verbs. Now, there's a lot of debate over which words are actually classed as semi-modal verbs. However, there does seem to be some consensus that dare, need, used to, and ought to are semi-modal verbs, which means that sometimes they behave like modal verbs, but sometimes they don't. So remember, these are all the modal verbs there are, and there are lots of different reasons why we use them, including when we want to talk about ability, possibility, or certainty. And there are such words as semi-modal verbs, and they sometimes act like modal verbs, but sometimes they act like main verbs.